know. You know. So,
Is this working?
not now, check it.
Close to your mouth. Good evening.
Yep, that's working.
You come on in and take a seat. We'll get started at 6:30. Please have a seat. We're getting ready to start at 6:30. We'd like to start on time. I'm Lenora Essick, and I would like to welcome you to Rural Hall Moravian Church in downtown Rural Hall. I'd like to introduce our pastor, Reverend Andrew Fravor. He is got his master's degree in 2017 from Moravian Theological Seminary in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He is married to Jenna Nodine, and he's an Army veteran. And after spending some time in Alaska, he's been here with us since August 2021. And we're glad he's here.
I don't have too much to say except welcome. I'm so glad that y'all are able to come and be with us. It's a pleasure to be a church that can welcome our community in so we can share the important information for our neighbors. And so I'm glad that we can do that with y'all. Just a couple of logistics. There are bathrooms directly behind you. They're down the hall. If you get to the freezer before the door that you came in, you've gone too far. So don't turn the corner. I think that's it. Sure, I can read the bios. Yeah, I'll introduce everybody so that you'll have all the information I do. First, we have our moderator, Carol Newsom, here. Carol is a sixth-generation Anderson to make their home in Rural Hall. Carol and her twin brother Mike were born at home on Lindley Street in Rural Hall, where Dr. Petty came from across the street to aid in the unexpected delivery. He was a member here. Left the town for college and was away for 30 years, returning to care for their mother at the end of Sarah's life and remained to be the steward of the family home place. Carol is an artist, an organic wild gardener, and a lifelong activist. Thank you for being a moderator, Carol. Next we have Robin McGurk-Smith. Robin is also a resident of Rural Hall, and when not learning about data centers, her day job is helping people keep their teeth as an endodontist. She graduated just down the street in Wake Forest University with a bachelor's degree in science. And after graduating from Wake, Robin traveled east on I-40 where she obtained her dental degree in special education from UNC Chapel Hill. Go Tar Heels. I went to Duke. Away from the office, Robin likes to spend time with her family working at their house and taking a hike or just relaxing over Sunday cookout. Thank you. Next we have Donna Kirby. Donna is also a resident of Rural Hall. Donna has worked as a registered nurse for 31 years and a family nurse practitioner for 10 years. In 2016, she graduated from George Washington University with a master's degree in nursing. Donna works at Atrium One Health here in Rural Hall. Next we have Ivy Banner. As a former manager of computer operations for Sara Lee Knit Products, Ivy Banner possesses over 34 years of expertise in the computer room and data center design, spanning the installation of mainframes, supporting power systems, specializing cooling, and enterprise networking. Throughout her distinguished career, she was successfully spearheaded the critical infrastructure and staffing initiatives for global brands, including Sara Lee and Hanes brands. Dennis Bennett is an industrial operation expert. Industrial operations expert and licensed maintainer, sprinkler professional with 45 years of hands-on experience, maximizing manufacturing uptime, safety, and infrastructure reliability. His technical expertise spans heavy electrical systems, plant lighting, and massive industrial infrastructure, including air compressors, dryers, chillers, cooling towers, and air handlers. Dennis spearheaded large-scale upgrades and technical repairs for 17 massive 75-foot material silos while serving as the primary liaison for specialized outside contractors. And then finally, we have Eve. Eve was born and raised in the Pilot Westfield area. She moved to Rural Hall in 2010, right after college, wanting to be close to the city, big city at Winston-Salem. She decided on Rural Hall because it had the neighborly character and some of the things she loved about the country. In 2015, Eve met her husband, who was born and raised in Rural Hall. They bought his childhood home, which is one of the oldest homes in Rural Hall, the Anderson Farmhouse. They now raise a small family there while continuing some of the old farm life traditions and restoring the historic home. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our researchers and professionals, and I'll hand it off to Carolyn.
Thank you all for coming. We thank Andrew for welcoming us here. I am Carol Newsom, and I would like to welcome everyone to this community conversation and to thank the Moravian congregation for allowing us to share space in their fellowship hall. We acknowledge that this community in this room represents a diverse group in all aspects, and that includes the subject of our conversation tonight. Whether you have not yet formed an opinion or you have a strong sense of how you stand on the consideration of a data center being built in Rural Hall, we ask that you treat everyone with respect and allow for patience and grace as we come together to understand all of the options that we have while allowing for the information provided this evening to assist in our education for this consideration. We will start with presentations from members of our community, followed by a brief break. Some of you may have already filled out a card with a question, and we will have folks during the second half of this evening collecting any additional cards with questions. We will allow for the panelists to respond first, and if they are unable to answer and a member of this gathering is able to respond to a question, I will call on the person to speak. We ask that unless you are called on to speak, please do not speak aloud and to hold private comments to a minimum so as not to speak over the appointed speaker. The panelists and many of the people in this room have been researching and working tirelessly over the last few months to learn about the impacts and benefits that could come from a data center in our community. On March 5th, a developer submitted a rezoning request to the planning department. The site is outside of the incorporated town limits, but is surrounded on 3 sides by the town of Rural Hall. The property is zoned RS9 and RS20. The request is to change the zoning is what made the community Okay. Okay. The request to change the zoning is what made this community concerned. Any request to rezone a property and alter the current land use opens a conversation up to the public. On March 9th, at the Town of Rural Hall regular council meeting, the manager mentioned that the rezoning request had been submitted. Soon after this, some residents living next to the proposed site received a letter from the planning department and or the developers to make them aware of the rezoning request. The developer's letter invited the residents to attend a community meeting held on March 30th. On April 2nd, members in the community began gathering regularly to discuss the consideration and formed working groups. Research, communication, strategy. From these readings, the panelists organized. Or originated. The developers, Drox and Montrose, formed a steering committee consisting of 8 members from the community. 6 being directly near the site, and 2 members being from neighboring towns, along with the staff from Montrose and their guests. The committee has met 3 times. On April 13th, the Town of Rural Hall Council unanimously voted on Resolution 901, opposition to data center. On June 9th, at the Town of Rural Hall regular council meeting, Michael Fest with Montrose gave a commitment from the Drops Group that if the rezoning passed, the Drops Group would commit to being annexed into the Rural Hall town limits, thus allowing Rural Hall to levy property taxes on the facility. On June 11th, the City County Planning Board voted 7-2 to recommend denial to rezoning. This recommendation followed extensive research and work from the Planning Department, and the recommendation was sent to the County Commissioner. On June 22nd, the Town of Rural Hall held a special meeting and voted 3-1 to approve Resolution 912, a resolution superseding Resolution number 901 and affirming support for proposed project Iron Spur Data Center development. Councilman Michael Woodcock was the lone no vote for Resolution number 912. On July 9th, the Forsyth County Commissioners meeting included a presentation from the Planning Department outlining the site plans and considerations with the rezoning request to allow for the data center to be built. Chris Murphy, head of the Planning Department, detailed why the department had made the recommendation to the commissioners to deny the rezoning, stating that the rezoning was inconsistent with Forward 2045 and land use considerations and could negatively impact the residential properties near the proposed site. Both the Drops Group and Montrose representatives were present at that meeting and were asked to answer questions posed by the county commissioners. On July 27th, the Planning Board representatives and developers will attend the county commissioners briefing meeting and discuss any new development concerning the site plans. And on July 30th at 6 p.m. at the Forsyth County Commissioners meeting, there will be a public hearing for rezoning request F-1669. At the public hearing, the parties for and against rezoning to allow for the data center will be allowed 30 minutes on both sides to state their case. This is double the amount of time usually allowed during a public hearing. The county commissioners are expected to vote on the rezoning at that meeting. Tonight, if you've already written a question down, if you haven't passed it, we have people who will walk around and get them. We will have a presentation first, 10 minutes approximately, with all our speakers, and then after the break, we'll collect the questions, and we will be answering as many of them as we can. If we're unable to either answer the question or do not have time, we will follow up on ruralhallinfo.com with responses to questions that are not met by the end of this evening. Thank you, everyone, and please be courteous, and let's work together as a community to find understanding this subject.
Hi, how's everyone doing tonight? Good? Good. All right, well, I'm going to start our talk about noise. What I said was, what's that noise? Because it seems like any time the data center came up, I looked at it on YouTube or really YouTube, and there would be these people that would be talking about that they lived near a data center, and it was, construction noise and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden, they started hearing this hum in the background that didn't seem to go away. So my goal tonight is to kind of talk to you about what that hum is, okay? Okay. There are multiple sources of noise associated with industrial hyperscale data centers. These include cooling towers, air handlers, air-cooled chillers, large electrical lines, hard surfaces, and diesel generators. Because humans can hear on a massive range of sounds, the decibel scale is used as a reference for how loud something is. 0 is the quietest sound a human can hear. Okay, so it's all based on what we hear. Even a 3 decibel increase, the sound intensity doubles. So that tells you how specific and how sensitive it is. For every 10 decibels, the sound intensity is multiplied by 10. So right here, when I'm talking, I'm at about a 79 dBA decibel. But if I go up Then I go up to an 84. So that kind of shows you how a decibel reader, works. For known and estimated external news resources, the noise level at the site can be over 110 decibels. Given these figures, so you're talking about a rock band or a leaf blower, that's if you were standing on the roof of the data center, okay, from all those sources. 400 feet from the site, which a lot of our neighbors live about 400 feet from the site and some less, the continuous noise produced is about 70 to 80 decibels. So we're talking about vacuum cleaners, lawn mowers, things like that. And like I said, this is all the time. Now that's without any buffers. You can add some buffers such as acoustic walls, natural trees and berms. For nature to be effective though, there needs to be enough distance between the source of the noise, which is the data center, and the recipient, which is the neighbor or the resident. Okay? Next slide, please. In the past, we do have some noise ordinances in Forsyth County. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. is 60 decibels. And then from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. is 70 decibels. Okay? So in the past, these ordinances were set up to keep a teenager from playing loud music as they were, driving by. If they did it multiple nights, you could call the authorities and say, hey, this guy is way higher than 70 decibels. Or from your neighbor from starting the lawnmower at 6 a.m. Saturday morning. And you're like, oh my gosh, if that happens 2 or 3 times, you're gonna call them, right? You're gonna say, hey, this guy keeps on starting his lawnmower early in the morning and waking me up. Now we're trying to use these same regulations for the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week nature of the data center. Many counties have stopped data center construction until new rules are written for them specifically. Even if the developer could achieve 60 decibels at the property line, a continuous 50 to 60 decibel sound level, while equivalent to a normal conversation or typical office background noise, and below the threshold of permanent hearing damage, is widely classified as noise pollution when it is unwanted, continuous, or disruptive of daily activities. Data center noise, by its nature, is continuous. The WHO and the EPA set a continuous noise limit at 55 decibels to protect people from, quote, active interference or annoyance. So it's that constant that is noise pollution when it comes to the data centers. Next. Vibration and frequency, which is the speed of vibration, numbers the measure of sound wave vibrations per second. And that determines the pitch that we hear. It is measured in hertz. Higher frequencies create higher pitches, while lower frequencies create lower pitches. The human ear can typically perceive sounds between 20 hertz and 2000 hertz. So I have a pretty low voice, particularly for a female, but my assistant talks all the way up here. So she, obviously her frequencies are much higher, and that's the deep, the sound waves are kind of compressed over less time. Low frequency noises are the results of vibrating. Sorry, next slide. Low frequency noises are the result of vibrations created by a data center. They fall into the range of 20 to 200 hertz. Frequencies in this range are more difficult to block and are a cause of common annoyance. So we're just going to let this go for a little bit, and you're going to see that the wavelengths, they become less straight and they start becoming more bundled. Well, basically, it's kind of like I was talking where it starts down here and it starts going up here to a noise level that, even that we can't perceive. Hyperscale data centers operate 24 hours and 365 days a year. There's a constant audible frequency penetrating a droning noise. Unlike road or highway noise, which ebbs and flows and lessens considerably at night, on certain days of the week, the hyperscale noise never stops. Constant noise acts as a stressor, triggering the body's flight or fight response. Chronic noise elevates stress hormones, alters brain chemistry, and can disrupt sleep. The constant noise can fuel anxiety, depression, cognitive fatigue, and reduce capacity to regulate emotions. This is especially true for adults and and older people. Okay, next one. There we go. So here's an example of the diesel generators that will be used on top of the roofs at a hyperscale data center. The project manager did say that they were about the length of two large, we say like F-250s or something like that. So they're very long, and you can see from the scale there, compared to the humans, how large they are. And they do help produce noise, but that's not why I brought up this slide. Each of these generators produces 2.5 to 4 megawatts of power. Given how many megawatts the hyperscale data center needs, the one that they're proposing in Rural Hall, you might expect between 150 to 200 of these on top of the roof for the hyperscale data center. But in addition to noise pollution, as you can see, they have this gray smoke, which is air pollution. These include nitrous oxide, particulate matter, carbon monoxide. The emission from diesel exhaust is linked to increased risk of lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, cardiopulmonary disease, increased asthma symptoms, and premature mortality. Diesel exhaust was classified in humans by the WHO in 2012 as carcinogenic. Next slide. So I was looking for a fork in the road picture, and they wanted to charge me like $29 for it. So instead I went to my backyard, and I kind of found this here. And so this is kind of like a fork in the road. I mean, this is what you get in Rural Hall, right? And these pretty sceneries. But I think that we're kind of right where those logs are, kind of at the bottom of that trail right there. And I think this is a big decision, a big decision maker in how Rural Hall goes forward. Are we going to go the hyperscale data center way, which is a possibility? Obviously, that will be more industrial, and it's going to take away that property for mixed use, which is what is in the two plans that we often talk about to kind of grow the town. Or are we going to go the mixed use way in the future for the town's growth? I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I will move it on to the next person. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna Kirby. I'm a nurse practitioner and I work at the Atrium 1 up here in Rural Hall. And I'd like to share with you some of the health impacts of data center noise. Okay. When we talk about the noise from the data center, we have to distinguish between what we hear and what our bodies feel. When we refer to decibels, this is the volume, and when we refer to hertz, that's the pitch or frequency. Standard noise ordinances often only regulate audible sound, the stuff we can hear with our ears, which is usually higher than 200 hertz. But the primary byproduct of heavy industrial cooling equipment is low frequency noise, and it behaves differently. It doesn't just pass through our ears, it passes through our walls and our bodies, creating a constant low-level physiological stress response. Low-frequency noise often exists beneath the threshold of what we consciously hear, making it harder to identify but physically taxing to endure. And because low-frequency noise has such long wavelengths, it doesn't just hit a wall and stop. It can cause the structure of a home to vibrate effectively, turning your own house into an amplifier from the industrial hum. In medicine, we know that the body is not designed for 24/7 exposure to industrial vibration. When you are exposed to this energy continuously, the body's fight or flight mechanism stays engaged. This isn't just a noise complaint, it's a public health concern regarding chronic physiological stress. In this slide it shows, in this slide it shows higher frequency noise such as sirens, speech, and traffic, which are over 200 hertz, and it dissipates quickly and is easily blocked by walls and trees, whereas low frequency noise from cooling fans and generators travel miles and are felt as vibration, pressure, and rumbling. The low frequency noise penetrates walls, trees, and the earth. Okay, the sounds I'll be focusing on are the infrasound and the low frequency noise. Infrasound is less than 20 hertz, and that's the sound that is not heard but felt. Neighbors living near a recently built data center describe feeling the sound in the chest and in the eardrums. Then there is also low frequency noise, which is 20 hertz to 200 hertz, and is perceived as a mechanical hum or a heavy bass sound that is not blocked by residential walls, and it vibrates homes. So low frequency sound that produces an audible hum or rumble from massive chillers and industrial exhaust fans typically remain disruptive for 1 to 3 miles from the facility. Infrasound that is often felt as pressure or vibration and not heard can travel 3 to 5 plus miles from the source. Standard acoustic testing at the property line often fails to capture the true impact of infrasound. Standard municipal noise regulations measure decibels using A-weighted filter, which is dBA, which mimics sound of the human ear, and low sensitivity to lower frequencies. C-weighted filter, which is dBc, measures low frequency noise and is rarely used. A-weighted decibel readers filter out the severe acoustic loading actually present, letting data centers pass audits while causing substantial physical distress to nearby residents who perceive this high disruptive infrasound as chest pressure, vibration, and unrelenting wall rattles. Some of the sources responsible for the infrasound and the low frequency noise, which are 24/7, 365 days a year, are the rooftop chillers, which are giant fans that produce sound frequencies that are trapped in a confined space and bounce back and forth, causing the sound energy to be amplified significantly. They emit constant infrasound and low frequency noise. The mechanical vibrations travel along the metal infrastructure and ground networks into neighboring homes. Dozens of stationary diesel generators are tested simultaneously, producing intense, periodic, low-frequency acoustic pressure waves, which are both felt and heard. If the data center is taken off of the electrical grid due to high energy demands during the heat waves, the noise from the dozens of generators will be constant during that time. The generators will also be exposing nearby residents to increased air pollution. Even when data centers are technically registered as quiet on a decibel reader, it can be affecting the health of its neighbors. This is usually due to 3 mechanisms. One is sleep fragmentation. It's a continuous low-frequency noise interferes with the REM and non-REM sleep, even if a person doesn't wake up. They experience micro-arousals that lead to cognitive exhaustion. The second way is autonomic stress. The human brain monitors acoustic changes for threats even during sleep. The constant hums and background noise triggers the subconscious fight or flight response, causing a constant release of cortisol and adrenaline. The third way is vibroacoustic stress. Low-frequency noise triggers structural resonance inside body cavities, manifesting as headaches, persistent internal ear pressure, and vertigo. The noise can cause sleep disturbances. Noise triggers a physiological stress response at levels as low as 33 decibels during sleep, with effects on cardiovascular health, cognition, sleep quality, and mental health. The developer for Project Iron Spur reports 60 decibels at the fence line, with homes being within 100 feet of the fence line. The noise can cause delayed sleep onset and early awakenings, and there is a 27% increased risk of poor sleep quality per 10 decibels, nighttime noise increment. So these residents that live near the fence line are 27 decibels above the 33 decibels for good sleep. So that increases the percentage to 81% increased risk of poor sleep quality. Okay. The noise can cause cognitive and mental health effects. It can cause impaired reading comprehension, impaired attention, and memory in children, and Rural Hall Elementary is less than a mile from the data center. It can increase the risk of depression and anxiety. It increases the risk of dementia and cognitive decline in the elderly. It can cause metabolic effects. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid, which is a steroid, meaning it directly raises blood glucose levels and increases insulin resistance. The 60 decibel noise or low frequency vibrations can disrupt a person's sleep, and that can alter glucose metabolism, making diabetes much more difficult to manage. There is a 6% increased diabetes risk per 5 decibel increase in noise exposure. It can cause systemic inflammation through elevated blood glucose, lipids, and blood viscosity, which is the thickness of the blood. In order to avoid these issues, noise would need to be below 50 decibels during the day and 40 decibels at night. At 50 decibels or less, your brain classifies noise as background noise, and the autonomic nervous system is not engaged. Nighttime noise over 40 decibels can cause sleep disruptions, triggering the autonomic nervous system with blood biomarkers clearly visible by the next morning. It can cause auditory effects such as hearing loss at certain frequencies from the chronic low-frequency noise. It can cause tinnitus development and exacerbations. And cardiovascular-wise, the body cannot enter into a natural state of deep relaxation, which leads to the sustained release of stress hormones, causing the arterial walls to thicken, increasing the long-term risk of stroke, hypertension, and heart attacks. The Hyena study found a direct correlation between nocturnal environmental noise and arterial hypertension. Even a single night of moderate environmental noise causes measurable endothelial dysfunction. Endothelial is the inside of blood vessels. Persistent nighttime noise triggers systemic inflammation, vascular oxidative stress, and it accelerates plaque buildup, directly scaling up the long-term risk of heart attack and coronary artery disease by the nearby residents. There's about a 7 to 17% increased risk of ischemic heart disease and 2 to 8% increased risk of heart failure per 10 decibel increase in noise. Low frequency noise can also cause problems for people with ADHD. Individuals with ADHD struggle with filtering out background noise so they can focus. Because the data center's cooling fans produce a constant hum, the ADHD brain can find it nearly impossible to filter that sound out. It creates a state of perpetuatory sensory overload. This can lead to cognitive fatigue, heightened irritability, and severe difficulties with concentration and executive functioning in their own home. Many children suffer from the condition, and the proposed data center will be located within a mile of elementary school. This invasive external industrial noise can lead to profound emotional depletion, elevated anxiety, and severe insomnia in neurodivergent individuals. The infrasound and low-frequency network can cause medication interactions. Continuous low-frequency background noise triggers a chronic, low-grade sympathetic nervous system response known as fight or flight, which elevates cortisol and adrenaline and can actively counter the therapeutic effects of blood pressure medications. Beta blockers like metoprolol and atenolol work by slowing the heart rate and reducing the blood pressure. The noise-induced stress increases the adrenaline levels, which in turn increases the heart rate, forcing the cardiovascular system to work harder and potentially reducing the clinical efficacy of the medication. It's also harder to maintain target blood pressure on ACE inhibitors and ARBs like lisinopril and losartan, as the noise-induced stress causes systemic vasoconstriction and fluid retention. Loop diuretics like Lasix and aminoglycosides can cause permanent inner ear hair damage, leading to hearing loss when combined with the constant environmental noise. Sleep medications and anxiety medications will need to be increased as sleep disruptions and anxiety increase, which can cause a tolerance and daytime fatigue. Anti-diabetics will also be less effective as elevated cortisol from chronic environmental annoyance triggers hepatic glucose production and increases insulin sensitivity, which can lead to unexplained spikes in blood sugar, requiring adjustments to a patient's diabetic regimen. Stimulant medications for ADHD like Adderall, Ritalin, and Vyvanse work by increasing dopamine and norepinephrine to help with focus. However, they also increase the heart rate. So combining a stimulant medication with a highly frustrating environmental stressor can cause feelings of physical anxiety, restlessness, and tension. Ototoxic medications and common analgesics, including aspirin and NSAIDs, are associated with sensorineural hearing loss, which may compound noise-induced hearing damage. The largest problem with hyperscale data centers is that the cooling systems run 24/7, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with no pause or decline during certain hours. This unbroken operational model derives the human body of idle, quiet periods, locking the autonomic nervous system into permanent fight or flight states, which accelerates the onset of chronic stress-regulated pathologies. A data center would impact our communities at the elementary school where children are highly vulnerable. Studies indicate chronic exposure to low mechanical noise levels severely impairs cognitive learning, speech perception, and reading retention rates. Neighbors will avoid the noise by staying inside of their homes. with their windows permanently shut, decreasing their quality of life. The value of the properties near the data center will decrease, especially the properties closest to the project. Low-frequency noise triggers a biological stress response in mammals and birds, shifting migration behaviors and increasing cortisol spikes in nearby farm animals. I just want to mention a few other health risks of data centers. Hyperscale data centers have a high magnetic fields as it takes massive amounts of energy to power them. Childhood leukemia risk increased 1.6 to 3.2 times for children under the age of 5 living near high voltage power lines. The proposed campus for Project Iron Spur has high voltage power lines in the park area. This would make it unlikely that anyone would want to enjoy the park beside the hyperscale data center with their children. Electromagnetic fields are also classified as possibly carcinogenic to humans by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. They are also associated with possible adverse pregnancy outcomes, including reduced birth weight and miscarriages. There is increased air pollution with the use of the diesel generators, which the hyperscale data centers test at regular intervals and run when the grid is overloaded. This contributes to asthma development and exacerbations, especially in children. It can cause impaired lung function development in children and increased emergency room visits. The next two slides show the layout of the hyperscale data center in the middle of the residential community. This will most likely affect everyone in the town of Rural Hall, especially the residents living in close proximity. This is another view. Take note of how close the homes are to the buildings. This is a picture of the west side of the hyperscale data center project from the developer, showing an 84-foot high building in the background, where I asked AI to provide a visual of the building in the neighborhood in the winter with less foliage. This is the image it produced, stating, "I have also made the proposed 84-foot data center fully visible and significantly enhanced its scale and mass to better represent how imposing it would be at that height. You can now see the entire building, the two distinct levels, the complex array of rooftop equipment, and its long, massive form as the dominant element behind the transparent tree canopy. This image also uses the technical details from the public records you provided, explicitly noting the height and distance that are minimized in the original sketch." This is the AI view from Glade Street, with less foliage showing how intrusive the building will be, even at the reduced height of 68 feet, which is actually 80 feet to the top of the equipment on the rooftop. The secondary entrance is also at the end of Glade Street, further annoying the residents on that quiet street. The buffers for this project are very minimal. On the west side, Circle Drive and Serena Drive, there is a 100-foot wide Type 4 vegetative buffer. Building distance from fence line is 130 to 150 feet away. On the north side, Glade Street, there is a side setback of 50 feet. The building distance from the fence line is 200 plus feet. The vegetative requirements of the 100-foot Type 4 buffer includes a minimum of 4 deciduous trees, that's ones that lose their leaves, 15 evergreen trees, and 30 shrubs to provide visual and structural screening. The site layout plan does not provide visual or structural. The site layout plan does not indicate any earthen berms within these perimeter buffer zones, which are typically engineered to block low-frequency ultrasound. The developer is proposing a massive heavy industrial footprint with a basic Type 4 plant buffer. Foliage does not stop low-frequency noise or infranoise without massive, dense earthen berms to deflect vibrations. The 24/7 mechanical hum will pass straight through the trees and penetrate nearby homes. This is industrial-scale utility infrastructure being pushed as close to residential boundaries as legally allowed, creating a permanent acoustic footprint in a peaceful community. The Forsyth County planning staff has already recommended denial because the heavy industrial project violates our community's growth plan. Now the final decision rests entirely with the Forsyth County Commissioners. The final decision will be made July 30th. You may still contact the Forsyth County Commissioners regarding the zoning change for Project Iron Spur. I have provided the email addresses. If rezoning is approved, we should request enforced dual spectrum measurements, DBA and DBC, to accurately quantify the low-frequency acoustic profile. DBA is used for audible sounds and is most commonly used. DBC is used for low-frequency noise. We need to mandate structural silencers, vibration dampening pads, earthen berms, and active noise cancellation systems during the design phase. We need to request mandatory setback distances at a minimum of 3,000 feet between the hyperscale sites and the residential or school zones. and we need to reform regional municipal noise statutes to penalize continuous low-frequency noise. Sorry, y'all, I had to go through that quick.
Hi, how is everyone doing? I'm so glad to see such a good crowd, a good turnout. My name is Ivy Banner. I've lived between Rural Hall and Germantown on Highway 65 most of my life, around 60 years. Now I'm older than that, but anyway. I primed tobacco for my grandpa Grubbs and my uncle Jerry Grubbs, who also ran a little store across from Hayworth Miller for many years, right down from the Wall Farm. I picked strawberries for Bob Young, and my father John and his dad, Reuben Banner, built houses for Bert Wilson. We all did banking with Kim Kiger at Commercial and Farmers Bank, and I must say, Rural Hall is my hometown, and I love it. So thank you for being here. It's good to see such a good crowd. So let's get started. And what I'm going to talk about today is the role of water cooling in the hyperscale data center. What if I told you the most important system keeping the data center alive isn't the servers, and it isn't even the electrical power? It's water. Well, we know that's not true, because without power, there would be no need for cooling. But without cooling, the servers in the data center would overheat in minutes and everything would shut down. So just for information, I'm going to break down exactly how chilled water systems work. And I'll do part of that using this drawing created by my brother-in-law, Dennis Bennett. His and my information includes how data centers are cooled, from the chillers outside the building to the cooling coils inside the building where the servers are installed. A server is a computer where applications, programs, data, and databases are stored. The capacity of a typical hyperscale data center is 5,000 server units. Each unit or server generates heat output of 200 to 400 BTUs per hour, depending on the activity being performed. Multiply that by 5,000, and you have high heat generating machines. It takes a tremendous amount of airflow to cool those units. Behind all that airflow is a water system, and it runs 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's not just supporting the data center, it's protecting it from failure and downtime. A chilled water system is simply a way of removing heat from inside the building to the outside. It does this using water to transport the heat away from the building. The basic concept is water is made cold by a machine called a chiller. That cold water is pumped through pipes into the data center. Inside the data center, that water flows through cooling coils and units. They're called air handlers. As air passes over the coils, and with the help of Freon, heat is transferred into the water, and the cooled air is delivered back to the servers. Then the now warm water returns back to the chiller, where the heat is rejected to the outside environment, and the cycle repeats continuously. There are two different methods of providing this level of cooling. One is an open loop system. It continually draws in fresh water, uses it once for heat exchange, and then discharges it or exposes it to the atmosphere, removing heat through evaporation. The developer in charge of obtaining rezoning approval for the data center in Rural Hall has estimated that 600,000 gallons of water would be needed per day in an open loop system. The second and more desired method is a closed loop cooling system. It recirculates a sealed batch of fluid, which is water and glycol mixture, or better known as antifreeze, and isolates it under normal operation. The developer has proposed using this method for providing cooling. Although 600,000 gallons of water is required for initial start of operation and for each time the system is purged, it will not use that amount of water on a daily basis. A closed loop system does not mean water-free, because as evaporation occurs, new water is constantly added to replace what is evaporated and discharged. Even with reclaimed water, water is consumed every day, 24/7. A simple sequence of a closed loop system is: the chiller unit cools water provided by the cooling tower. Mechanical pumps between the chiller and the air handler send the water into the data center. The air handler units inside the data center use that water to cool the air, making the airflow cool. The servers absorb that cooled air and replace heat that has been generated by the servers, in essence, cooling them down. The hot air returns to the air handler units, and the heat transfers into the water. The warm water then returns to the chiller, and the heat is rejected to the outside of the building. This loop runs continuously every second of every day. It must be noted, there is a trade-off between the two methods. Open loop uses huge amounts of water daily, while a closed loop system uses less water, but has the potential to produce environmental contamination because of the chemicals required for supporting a continuous recirculation. Additionally, regardless of the looping system used, cooling towers without biocide treatment become breeding grounds for bacteria. Industrial bleach, municipal disinfectants, and ammonia are among those chemicals used to prevent the growth of waterborne pathogens. Those chemicals, if released, can produce water contamination. Likewise, in order to regulate the pH balance in the cooling tower, water and chemical closing systems, such as automated controls that inject sulfuric acid to lower alkalinity, are often used. Again, this increases the potential for water contamination. So just based on the limited information we've provided tonight, it's clear that water cooling plays a vital role in the operation of a hyperscale data center. I'll ask Dennis now if he thinks I've missed anything or we're good.
I think you covered it well, and what we'll do is that when we take our break, we'll move this down here on the floor where you can actually see. A lot of people have really asked the question, what is a cooling tower and what does a cooling tower do? And that's what Ivy has been describing. It does use a ton of water. 85 degrees is the breaking point for a chilling unit. So anytime you get about 85 degrees in this heat wave we've had, you continue to have a massive amount of evaporation, and you'll have a lot of bleed on it, and you'll have a lot of replenishing in that tower. We've never been told exactly how many towers it's going to have, but it's going to be quite a few of them, and they're going to be on the roofs. So it's about covering that.
I would also like to thank Randy Adams for his extensive research and contribution to this topic tonight. What an asset you have been, sir. And I thank you. Thank you all for being here. Please, if you have questions, pass them forward. We have a commitment. If we can't answer them tonight, we certainly will in the next couple of days. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Eve. I would just like to start by saying thank you all for being here, whether you're for, against, or on the fence about the data center. it's great to see the community can come out and talk about their concerns, opinions, and ask questions together. So I live on Broad Street, just down from the depot. So I'm going to speak to you a little bit about my concerns with the railroad and the proposed hyperscale data center. Some of you may know that our train depot took on the transfer of butane about 2 years ago. In the last year, the operation has really grown. As you can see from the image here in the slide, the tankers hold 960,000 gallons of butane, but for your sake and mine, I'm going to round that to 30. The rail yard has, on average, about 30 butane cars, some days more, some days less. This would mean roughly 900,000 gallons of butane set on the rail yard at some point each week, if not multiple times during the week. Slide. Butane is a highly flammable gas that is compressed into liquid. These tankers can have butane leaks which, if met by an ignition source, can detonate and would escalate rapidly. Even if there were no leaks, these tankers can explode from a process known as bleed, the boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. This is caused by an external fire around the tanker, causing the weakening of the steel faster than the safety valve can release pressure, causing an explosion. Slide. As you can see in this photo, there's an industrial park in this area. There are homes over here on Glade Street, and then many of us live down here on Broad Street as well, including myself. Slide. I have outlined in red, this is the railroad tracks, but the butane tankers they come and they go through this area, so you can see it wraps all the way around down through here. The white outline is the proposed area for the hyperscale data center. This area down here is where they're going to put 3 buildings that are 2 stories tall for each building. This area right here is Anderson, so ABC Garage is here, Stanleyville Paving is here, and A&J Pallet Yard is here. They plan on putting a 3-acre substation right here, and based on their drawing, it will butt up to the tree line, and it will come down right here to the property line. In this video, I'm going to show you from a ground level just how close this is. So as you can see, that's Broad Street. You can see homes here. The homes do go down behind the trees. You just can't see them. There are the butane tankers sitting right there. Those butane tankers reach behind the tree line. So there is another railroad track behind there, and I'll show you that in a minute. This area right here is the railroad tracks, and there are usually butane tankers sitting there as well. I did do this after hours, so these are sitting there for overnight. And as you can see, there are plenty that sit there overnight. About a year ago, they built this area in right here. This part of the railroad track stops, is where they hold some of the butane tankers that are not sitting in the rail yard overnight. So the next video that I'll show you will be from the other side of that tree line. Right there is A&J Pallet with that fence. You see that fence line goes all the way up and touches at the railroad tracks. And those are not the tankers, but tankers do sit there. I see them sitting there all weekend this weekend. Right there is the house that I showed you from the previous video. That's how close it is. Now you're going to start seeing part of the rail yard. That's a butane tanker. You'll start seeing those. You're going to see some ladders come up, and that's where they do the transfer, is right there in those ladders. They do climb up there and do that with a hose, which they then lay on the ground later. Okay, next slide. As you can see, Anderson is currently on the smaller side for a road. There are these transfer truck tankers that are coming in to get that pumped into them throughout the day. There is also concrete trucks coming and going because there is a concrete plant there as well. And if we add the substation, if they add that substation, you're going to see more trucks coming and going in there who are going to be carrying large pieces of metal to build the substation. This year there was a pole that was hit. You can actually see they still have some of the caution tape up, but there was a pole that was hit and 3 power poles were pulled down by a truck, and it did start a small fire in that area. Next slide, please. There is a Duke substation already in this area, and the new substation, the 3-acre one, would be sitting right here. Some of you may be thinking, well, there's a fire station nearby, and that they'll be equipped to handle this issue. In the photo, you can see the fire station sits 0.6 miles from the butane along with the elementary school. While we have a wonderful fire department, an explosion from one of these tankers can send shockwaves and metal shrapnel flying for hundreds of yards. Now imagine 30 of these exploding. You're looking at roughly a mile radius fireball. Now, we want to also add into account that there's an actual data center itself that will be sitting right behind that. Just a few hundred yards away, data centers have many explosive materials in them, such as, but not limited to, lithium-ion batteries, chemicals for their closed-loop system like glycose, nitrate-based corrosion inhibitors, and diesel. These chemicals and materials will be added to the hazards that we already face in the rail yard. So much so that in 2015, the Wells Fargo data center on Salas Creek objected to the rezoning of the gas station and the fuel tanks that would be beside their location because of their concern having fuel next to their data center. They had a concern for the safety of the public. So just think about that for a moment. The Salas Creek data center was concerned about having fuel next to their data center. If you think that data centers catching fire is rare, I encourage you to look it up. In South Korea, there was, in September of 2025, it took 10 hours for 200 firefighters just to get the blaze under control. It also happened in France in 2021, where an entire data center burned to the ground. And there was a pair of fires in 2025 at a Virginia facility. Fires in data centers are not uncommon. Fires in transformers and substations are not uncommon. Next slide. I'm not sure about each of you, but I do not enjoy living across the street from these tankers. Every time that they collide, my whole house shakes, and I cringe because I know what's inside of these tankers. If these derail, it's not just a news story about a corn spill. It will be catastrophic to our town. This should concern us all, as it is a current threat, and we need to come together and fight, but right now we need to ensure that we do not add fuel to the fire and allow more hazards in this area. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all our presenters tonight for doing the research they have and for presenting their points at this time. We're going to take a break of about 10-15 minutes, but let's everyone be back in our seats at 1:45. You can write down any questions this time, pass them up. We'll put both of these down lower so you can look. But then when we come back in, we'll be answering questions. So come back prepared to, hopefully, we'll get a lot of questions answered and have a better understanding of what we're contending with. Thank you.